Welcome to Whisperwire, where real Reddit stories breathe. Betrayal cuts deeper, revenge whispers louder, and love, loss, and justice collide in ways you never forget. Because sometimes, the quietest voice delivers the most powerful truth. Please like this video and subscribe Whisperwire. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. I found out I was pregnant last week. Me and Bradley had been together for almost 3 years. And although we weren't trying, we had talked about kids. He always said he wanted them someday. I was nervous to tell him because we had some rough patches lately. He'd been distant, working late, and weird about money. I thought maybe a baby would bring us closer. I bought a test on my lunch break and took it in the office bathroom. 2 lines. Definitely pregnant. I decided to leave work early and surprise him. He works from home on Thursdays. I was so excited. I almost called him on the drive, but wanted to see his face. Our apartment complex has this weird layout where you can see into our living room windows from the parking lot. I saw Bradley sitting on the couch with his laptop open. I was about to call out when I realized he was on FaceTime. I just stood there for a second, watching. He was talking to Tracy, his ex from before we met. They broke up like 4 years ago, and he always said she was crazy and controlling. He told me they didn't talk anymore, but I could see her face on the screen. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were both laughing. I don't know why, but I just froze. I didn't go inside. Instead, I went back to my car and called him, told him I was leaving work early and would be home in 20 minutes. He sounded weird and said he was in the middle of a work call. I drove around the block and parked on the side street. Then I snuck back and stood under our living room window. I know how crazy that sounds, but something felt wrong. That's when I heard it. Bradley was still talking to Tracy. He was telling her how things were getting serious with me and how I was pressuring him about marriage. I wasn't even doing that. We had talked about it once, like 6 months ago. Tracy asked something I couldn't hear, and then Bradley said, "She's so stupid and desperate. She believes everything I say. I'm just using her for her money until you take me back. She's pathetic. Actually thinks we'll get married." They both laughed. "I've been supporting us since Bradley lost his job last year. He said he was freelancing, but money was tight. I paid for everything. Rent, food, his car payment, even the vacation we took to see his parents." Tracy said something else, and Bradley replied, "Yeah, babe, I know. Just a few more months, and I'll have enough saved. She has no idea I've been putting money." Aside, the thinks I'm broke. I wanted to scream, or throw up, or both. 3 years. 3 years of my life with this person who was just using me, and I'm pregnant with his baby. I don't know how, but I managed to keep it together. I walked back to my car, drove around for 15 more minutes, and then came home like nothing happened. I pretended to be happy to see him, kissed him hello, asked about his day. He lied to my face about having a work call, said he was stressed about a deadline, asked why I was home early, and I said I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't tell him about the pregnancy. That night, he acted completely normal. We ordered takeout. I paid, of course. This morning, I checked our bank accounts. In the last year, I've spent over $45,000 supporting us. He contributed nothing. I checked his phone. While he was in the shower, hundreds of messages with Tracy. They've been planning for him to move back to her city. He's been sending her money. My money. I found a secret account where he's been saving almost $30,000. Money he told me he was using for bills or job training courses. There were even screenshots of conversations with my friends, where he'd pumped them for information about my finances, asking if I had mentioned any bonuses or raises coming up, like he was studying me, planning how to extract the most value. I found messages where he complained about how boring I was in bed, how he couldn't wait to be with Tracy again, how he was only with me for the financial security. While he got his together, There were even photos they sent each other, intimate photos, while I was at work paying our bills. I wanted to confront him right there, scream at him, throw his things out the window, tell him I knew everything, tell him about the baby he'll never meet. But something stopped me. I realized if I showed my hand now, he'd just leave, take my money, and go back to Tracy. They'd laugh about how stupid I was, how easily I fell for everything, how I never saw it coming. Even worse, he might try to stay for the baby, pretend he was sorry, drain me for 18 more years of child support. No, I needed a plan. Bradley thinks I'm a doormat, thinks he can use me and discard me when he's done, thinks I'm too stupid to see through his lies, thinks I'll just cry and beg him to stay. When he eventually leaves, he has no idea what I'm capable of. Update: first of all, thank you all so much for the support and advice on my last post. I was not expecting thousands of comments and messages. You guys are amazing. I spent the next 2 days in a fog, moving through our apartment like a ghost. While my mind raced, Bradley didn't notice anything different. He was too busy texting Tracy when he thought I wasn't looking, too busy planning their future with my money, the money I worked 60-hour weeks for, while he sat on our couch applying for jobs and networking. The first thing I did was protect what was left. I went to the bank during lunch and opened a new account at a completely different bank, transferred most of my paycheck there, leaving just enough in our joint account to avoid suspicion, changed all my passwords, and set up notifications for any withdrawals over $100. Then, I started documenting everything: screenshots of their messages, photos of the secret account statements, recordings of his calls with Tracy. When I pretended to be in the shower, I even found receipts for gifts he'd bought her using my credit card, designer purses, and jewelry, while I was buying store-brand cereal to save money. The whole time, I kept thinking about the baby growing inside me, while this parasite drained me dry. Every time I felt sick or tired, I reminded myself it wasn't just for me anymore. I had someone else to protect now. I called my oldest friend, Freya. We've known each other since kindergarten. Didn't tell her everything over the phone, just that Bradley and I were having serious problems, and I might need a place to stay. She didn't hesitate, said her spare room was mine whenever needed. Then I called my brother Sam. He's always been protective, and I knew if I told him everything right away, he'd show up ready to kill Bradley. Instead, I just asked if he could help move some things into storage soon, said Bradley. And I were reorganizing. He agreed to bring his truck that weekend. Bradley was getting suspicious, kept asking why I was being weird and distant. The audacity of this man, spending 3 years lying to my face, stealing my money, mocking me to his ex, and he thought I was acting strange for 2 days. I wanted to laugh in his face. Instead, I blamed work stress and period cramps. He immediately lost interest, never cared about my problems, unless they affected him. Friday night, I told him I was going out with work friends. He seemed relieved to have the apartment to himself. Probably couldn't wait to FaceTime Tracy without whispering. Instead of going out, I sat in my car in the parking garage with my laptop, using the complex's Wi-Fi to monitor our home security camera. We'd installed it last year after a break-in next door. Bradley had forgotten it existed because he never bothered with anything related to home security or maintenance. That was all me too. 20 minutes after I left, he was on the couch with his phone propped up, talking and laughing with Tracy. I turned up the volume on my laptop. Bradley was saying he was worried I suspected something. Tracy's voice came through, tiny but clear, telling him to stick to the plan, 3 more weeks, and he'd have the bonus money, then could come home to her. My blood boiled. My quarterly bonus, the one I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, the one that would finally pay off my student loans, he was waiting for that. Bradley wed that he missed her, said it was hard pretending with me, that I was so clingy lately. Clingy? I'd barely touched him in months, because he was always too tired or stressed about work. Work he wasn't even doing. They talked for over an hour, plans for trips they'd take with my money, jokes about how stupid I was. Tracy even suggested he should get me to buy him a new laptop before leaving, as a parting gift. They laughed about that, hard, when he wasn't looking. Something cold and calculating crossed Tracy's face, something that made me wonder if she was playing him too. But then it disappeared, replaced by the serene smile she wore whenever he looked at the screen. I had enough, more than enough, time for action. Saturday morning, I told Bradley I needed to go into the office for a few hours. Instead, I went to see a lawyer. Angelina had helped a co-worker through a nasty divorce last year. She listened without judgment, as I explained everything: the theft, the deception, the pregnancy I hadn't disclosed, Angelina said financially. We had a strong case for fraud. He misrepresented his intentions to secure financial support. The text proved premeditation. We could potentially recover the money he'd saved, though it might take time. When I asked about the baby, she said gently that legally I wasn't obligated to tell him during pregnancy. After birth, he could petition for paternity and visitation, but given the circumstances, we could potentially limit his involvement. I nodded, taking notes on my phone. We discussed restraining orders, changing locks, and removing him from our apartment lease. I paid her retainer with money from my new account. That afternoon, Sam came over with his truck. As planned, Bradley looked confused. When we started loading boxes, I said cheerfully, "We were just reorganizing. As I'd mentioned, these were going into storage to make more space." What Bradley didn't know was that the boxes contained all my important documents, irreplaceable family items, and anything of value that was solely mine. While he watched TV, Sam helped load my grandmother's jewelry, birth certificate, diplomas, and photo albums into his truck, things Bradley couldn't sell or destroy. When everything exploded, Sam knew something was wrong. He kept giving me looks, but respected that I wasn't ready to talk. As he was leaving, he hugged me tight and whispered that whatever it was, I wasn't alone. I almost broke down then, almost told him everything. But I wasn't ready. Sunday morning, I went to brunch with Freya, but actually met with my bank manager. I had proof of Bradley's fraud, messages explicitly stating he was using me for money. While planning to leave, the manager flagged my accounts for additional security and helped dispute several large transfers Bradley had made, claiming they were for our expenses. When I got home, Bradley was still in bed, phone clutched to his chest. Even in sleep, I carefully took it, already knowing his password. My birthday. How thoughtful. There were new messages from Tracy about checking flights, saying once he got my bonus, they could book for the 18th, that I'd never know what hit me. Still couldn't believe I didn't check the accounts. I took screenshots and emailed them to myself and Angelina, then replaced the phone exactly as found. On Monday, I called in sick to work, waited until Bradley left for his networking event, Coffee with Tracy, according to his location sharing, and withdrew $25,000 from our joint savings, not everything that would alert him immediately, but enough, transferred it to my new secure account. When he came home that evening, he was practically glowing, kept trying to kiss me, be affectionate. It took everything not to scream in his face, not to tell him I knew he'd spent the afternoon planning our breakup with the woman he really loved. Instead, I smiled and asked about his day, listened to his elaborate lies about industry contacts and potential job leads. I mentioned I had good news, reminded him how I'd been saving for us to potentially buy a house. His eyes lit up with naked greed. He'd forgotten about those savings, too focused on my upcoming bonus. I continued that I thought we were finally in position to start looking, that I'd been pre-approved for a mortgage. Bradley was so excited, he hugged me, probably calculating how much more he could squeeze from me before disappearing. He suggested we celebrate. I agreed, saying I'd make reservations somewhere special that weekend. He was so excited by more potential money that he didn't notice me packing a small bag. While he showered, didn't question why I suddenly needed to work late that night. I drove straight to Freya's apartment and finally broke down, told her everything, showed her the evidence, watched her face transform from shock to rage to fierce determination. I slept in her spare room that night. Phone turned off. Let Bradley worry for once. Let him wonder where I was, what I was doing. A small taste of what was coming. The next morning, I had 6 missed calls and a dozen increasingly frantic texts. I responded with a breezy message about falling asleep at Freya's after girls' night, apologized for worrying him, said I'd be home after work. At the office, I met with my boss, Dave, explained I was going through something personal and might need flexible hours for a few weeks. Didn't give details. But he must have seen something in my face, because he immediately approved and offered additional support if needed. The restaurant reservation was set for Saturday. Bradley spent the week being unusually attentive, bringing me coffee, offering massages, asking about my day. Each gesture made me sicker. Each touch made my skin crawl. But I smiled, played along, let him think his performance was working. Friday night, I packed another bag. While he was in the bathroom, more clothes, more essentials, told him I was donating old things to make room for new furniture. When we bought our house, he helped carry the bags to my car, eager to please the golden goose. He thought I still was. That night, I barely slept, knowing what the next day would bring. Bradley snored beside me, arm thrown possessively across my body. I slipped out from under it, disgusted, stood in our darkened living room, looking at the life we'd built, the life I'd paid for, while he plotted to leave me. Saturday arrived, the day of reckoning. Bradley spent an hour getting ready, pining in the mirror. I wore a simple black dress and the necklace my mother gave me before she died. Something about having her clothes today felt important. As we drove to the restaurant, Bradley chatted excitedly about house features he wanted: a home office, a game room, a hot tub. I nodded and smiled, letting him spin his fantasies while mentally checking off final preparations for what was about to happen. The restaurant was upscale. Bradley's eyes widened at the menu prices. I told him generously to get whatever he wanted. Today we celebrate. He ordered the most expensive steak, premium cocktails, appetizers, ran up a tab that made me want to laugh. One last meal on my dime, while we waited for dessert, I excused myself to the bathroom, checked my phone to confirm everything was in place, texted Freya that it was time. I returned to the table, calm and collected. Bradley was typing rapidly on his phone, but quickly put it away when he saw me, probably telling Tracy about the expensive dinner and imminent house purchase, probably laughing at how easy it was to manipulate me. The waiter brought champagne I'd secretly pre-ordered. Bradley raised his glass to us, to our future. With a smile that never reached his eyes, I raised my water glass, didn't correct his assumption that I wasn't drinking because I was driving. I said softly that I'd like to make a toast, too. His smile faltered at my tone. I toasted to new beginnings and to the truth finally coming to light. I reached into my purse and placed my phone on the table. Screen up, played the recording of him and Tracy from the security camera, watched his face drain. She's so stupid and desperate. She believes everything I say. I'm just using her for her money until you take me back. I watched his expression change from confusion to horror to panic. Watched him realize it was over. All of it. The scam, the lies, the future he'd planned with my money, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw the real Bradley. Last update. I'm still in shock about everything that's happened since my last post. First, thank you for all the supportive comments and messages. They've honestly kept me going through this nightmare. Here's what happened after. Bradley's face went through so many emotions at once. Shock, confusion, anger, and finally, calculation. I could see him running through possible lies, trying to find an angle. He started stammering that I didn't understand the context. I held up my hand as restaurant conversations continued around us. I told him quietly that I had hours of recordings, hundreds of screenshots. I knew about the money he'd been stealing, the secret account, everything. Bradley leaned forward, lowering his voice, calling me baby, saying it wasn't what I thought, claimed he, and Tracy were just joking around, that she'd been trying to get him back. But he told her no. I laughed at the audacity of him continuing to lie. After I'd played his own words back to him, I reminded him about the $30,000 of my money he'd sent her, the expensive bracelet he bought her, while telling me we couldn't afford to fix my car. His plans to leave after my bonus came through. His eyes darted around the restaurant, suddenly worried about who might hear. He suggested we go home and talk like adults. I told him there was nothing to talk about, and it wasn't his home anymore. As of that morning, he'd been removed from the lease. His things were packed, and waiting at Dave's place, Bradley's mouth fell open. He protested that it was our apartment. I corrected him, my name on the lease, my rent payments, my apartment. He was just a guest who overstayed his welcome by about 3 years. He said I was overreacting to some stupid joke with an ex. I pulled out a folder from my purse and slid it across the table. Inside were printouts of his secret account statements, transfer records, screenshots of messages detailing how he'd been using me. He flipped through the pages. Growing paler, he accused me of spying on him, saying that was illegal. I almost laughed again, pointing out the irony of the man who stole $45,000 talking about legality. Bradley snapped that he never stole anything, said I gave him that money, offered to support him. I asked about the lies, about calling me stupid and pathetic, about planning to leave once he'd gotten everything he could. He shrugged, dropping the act completely, said, "People say things they don't mean when venting. Everyone does it." I asked if that's what he was doing when sending her my money, making reservations to her city, buying gifts with my credit card. He asked what I wanted. Money? An apology? I said simply that I wanted him gone, from my apartment, accounts, life. He asked what if he refused. I slid another document across the table, explaining that my lawyer would file fraud charges, police would get involved, and instead of just leaving, he'd go to jail. He scanned the document, jaw, clenching, saying I wouldn't follow through. I told him to try me. Finally, Bradley said, fine, he'd get his stuff and go. But I was making a mistake. I replied, we had nothing. It was all a lie. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. He tried explaining again, but I cut him off, pointed out his messages did that already, calling me desperate, pathetic, stupid, using me until Tracy would take him back. Bradley started saying, people say things. I told him to stop. It was over, completely over. His expression hardened. As he asked about his stuff at Dave's, I confirmed everything was there, except what he bought with my money. He protested that wasn't fair. I couldn't believe it. Asked if he wanted to talk about fair. After stealing from me for years, mocking me behind my back, planning to abandon me once he'd taken everything, said he'd lost the right to talk about fair. He asked, what if he went back to the apartment instead? I explained calmly that locks were changed, security informed, key fob deactivated, and Sam waiting there just in case. His face flushed with anger, saying, I had it all planned out. I replied, I learned from the best. He spent 3 years planning to use and discard me. I took a week to plan my response. Bradley stood abruptly, saying, this wasn't over. I said, it was, completely over. Goodbye. He stormed out. I called Sam to warn him Bradley might try coming to the apartment. Sam assured me he and Freya were there, had my back. I drove home, finding Sam, and Freya on the couch with wine. Freya asked how it went, poured me a glass, before remembering and apologizing. Sam's eyebrows shot up. Questioning, I took a deep breath and told them I was pregnant. After a silence, Sam asked if it was Bradley's, and if he knew, I said yes. It was his, and no, he didn't know. Might never know. Freya promised they were there for me. Whatever I decided, we talked through what happened at the restaurant and what might come next. Sam worried Bradley could become dangerous when cornered, and insisted on staying the night. Freya stayed too, in my bedroom, while I took the spare room, couldn't face the bed I'd shared with Bradley. Around midnight, Bradley started texting, first anger and threats about lawsuits, then manipulation and apologies, claiming he loved me, but was confused that Tracy pressured him. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. At 2 a.m., he showed up, pounding on the door, yelling my name. Sam spoke through the door, telling him I didn't want to talk, and he should leave, Bradley shouted. It was his apartment, too, Sam replied. Not anymore, and he should leave before we called police. Bradley kept pounding and shouting. Freya had already called 911. By the time officers arrived, Bradley had left, but they took a report for the restraining order documentation. Morning brought dozens more texts from Bradley, cycling back to apologies and explanations. I blocked his number. Sam and Freya helped clean out the last traces of him from the apartment. We found a hidden credit card statement, showing more purchases for Tracy, photos of them together from when he claimed to be at job interviews. Around noon, Tracy called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. She said Bradley was telling everyone I was crazy, making up accusations, because I was obsessed, trying to ruin his life, because he was breaking up with me. When I asked why she was telling me this, she said she thought I should be prepared. He was very convincing. Something in her tone made me pause. I asked how she would know that. She laughed softly, explaining he did the same to her 4 years ago, used her for money, cheated, then called her psychotic when she found out. I sat down, confused about her FaceTiming with him, planning their future, him sending her my money, she saying she was playing him, like he played me, but she knew what he was from the start. This time, said she just wanted her money back, that he stole before moving on to me. I asked why tell me now. She said simply that he was dangerous when cornered, and I just cornered him publicly. He was humiliated, exposed, unpredictable. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone, unsure if she was telling truth, or this was another game. I called my lawyer about the conversation. She advised adding Tracy to the restraining order to create clear boundaries with everyone involved. Sunday passed with more texts from Bradley, from new numbers. I forwarded them all without reading beyond first words. Monday, I went to work, trying to focus on normal life. Dave checked in without pushing for details. At lunch, I scheduled a prenatal appointment, making the pregnancy feel more real. The thought of having Bradley's baby still made me nauseous, but I was determined this child would have a parent who loved them unconditionally. After work, I went to Frey as planned. Sam brought takeout and updates. Bradley tried accessing our empty joint accounts, showed up at Dave's, ranting about suing me, called Sam, alternating between threats and pleas to talk sense into me. My phone rang with an unknown number at 8 p.m. Against better judgment, I answered. Bradley's slurred voice asked if I thought I was so smart. I said calmly, I was hanging up. Don't call again. He suddenly shouted that I'd ruined his life, wasted 3 years of his, called me a controlling. I ended the call, blocked the number, added it to documentation. Tuesday brought a certified letter from Bradley's lawyer demanding equitable distribution of assets and threatening to sue for his investment in the relationship. My lawyer called it laughable, said his lawyer would drop him once seeing our fraud evidence. By Wednesday, Bradley learned I was at Freya's. He showed up, pounding on her door, shouting my name. Freya called police, while I recorded his threats. Officers found him still yelling, intoxicated, and took him in for public intoxication and trespassing, another incident for our case. Thursday, the temporary restraining order was granted. Bradley couldn't contact me, come near my home or workplace, or access my accounts or property. Sam served the papers, reported back that Bradley went white with fury, crumpling the documents and throwing them down. Friday, Bradley violated the order by showing up at my office. Security stopped him in the lobby. Dave witnessed everything, offered to testify. Bradley was escorted out, screaming I'd stolen from him, that I was a liar, that everyone would see the truth soon. Monday morning, I woke nauseated from morning sickness As I sipped ginger tea, my phone buzzed with a text, congratulating me on the baby. Asking when I planned to tell him, my blood ran cold. I'd only told Freya, Sam, and my doctor. Another text explained, Tracy told him. Said I mentioned it when calling her. Tracy had been playing both sides, feeding him information. While pretending to warn me, I forwarded the text to my lawyer without responding, blocked Tracy, trusted no one outside my immediate circle. At work, I met with HR, explained the situation generally, abusive ex, restraining order, workplace safety concerns. They were supportive, notified security, offered flexible arrangements. That afternoon, my lawyer called with news. The judge granted a permanent restraining order and was considering criminal charges for financial fraud based on our documentation. She said it was a good outcome, that I did everything right. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about raising this child alone, explaining their absent father, potential custody battles, but for the first time in years, I was living authentically. No more subsidizing someone else's dreams while postponing mine, no more accepting scraps of affection while being mocked behind my back, no more being anyone's fool. Bradley thought he'd broken me. Instead, he'd freed me. This was Whisper Wire, where silence isn't weakness, it's the ultimate revenge. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and join the journey. Because tomorrow's whisper might just become the story of your life. Thanks for watching.